We do. So what we might do now is actually, where's Megan? Hello, Megan. Welcome today. I might just introduce you. I've got a lovely bio here of you. I hope that it's the bio you gave us.
There's 2 pages.
It's only
Everybody's got two. It's just like everyone's just so that they didn't leave the second page.
So to get us going this afternoon, we have Megan Peacock. She's the Manager, Evidence and Practice Development at Bethany Community Support. Megan has worked in community services for 20 years. She's worked with children, prisoners, refugees, young people with disabilities and in aged care in a variety of positions, from practitioner positions, project manager role and researcher. She's worked at Melbourne and Monash universities in research positions looking at terrorism and sexual assault. I'm sure they're separate things, hopefully. She's currently working at Bethany Community Support on a variety of projects, including projects on implementation and practice development. And I have to say the implementation stuff really interests people. I was at the Ministerial Committee yesterday and we were talking about reform, and everybody was saying it's terrific what we're doing here, but implementation and getting that right is really, really critical. So can we give Megan a round of applause if we get her to come and present us today?
Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners. I should put this down. I'm not very good with microphones. I have bad coughing and sneezing into them, so I'll just stand back. So I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Centre for the opportunity to talk about the trial, and I acknowledge CEI and DHHS in the room today who have been very supportive with us through this trial. I'm only going to talk for 10 minutes because I figure lots of people are going to want to ask lots of questions about the nitty-gritty of the common elements. So I'm just going to give you an overview of the journey that we've been on so far and then how we're actually looking at embedding that more broadly across our agency. So briefly, we'll take you what we've been doing. So I think it was last June, Jess, that we started with a 20-week trial was what we're up for, and we said, yep, we're up for that, we can do this in 20 weeks. Thankfully that was extended because we couldn't do it in 20 weeks. But as you can see, with lots of workshops, our first team was family services workers across Geelong and Warrnambool, so we were doing it across quite a distance. We had really good authorisation from the CEO, from the exec. They were really involved in the project, and lots of training and coaching. And I have to say, you know, the support that CEI gave us in that implementation was really good. It's been really tailored to what we needed, how we were going, and really practitioner-driven. The second trial, so we're doing a second trial now, so we've expanded it through our family services team in Geelong, so that will mean, I think, probably about 90% of that team of 30 will be trained, and we're now doing it in women's family violence, so it'll be interesting to put a family violence lens over the common elements as well. And so their first training is today in motivational interviewing. So one of the lessons that we started with is we picked 4 elements in the first place. That was way too many. We've now got 3. And of those 3, there's only 2 elements are the same for both the teams. And I think 3 of the elements are the same as the previous trial, and that'll make sense. So there's commonality in what we're kind of doing. So I guess some of the things that we really learned, and some of this stuff is kind of like, yep, this is what you should do when you do a project, but I think what worked really well was ensuring that the practitioners were there from the beginning, and there was great engagement and great encouragement from CEI about how to do that. They were the decision makers from the start. We had execs, project manager and team leaders and managers in the room. It felt a little top heavy at times, but actually the practitioners made most of the decisions. We can talk about, I really wanted the element seeking feedback, really pushed and pushed and pushed because it was going to form part of my agenda, and I got pushed and pushed and pushed back. So we didn't get that up because it wasn't what the practitioners wanted. So it was fine in the end, but we will do it one day, I'm determined. I think the process has been really reflective and engaging, really regular meetings. So at first people thought, oh, we're going to meet every second week on this. But actually it was really important in continuing the momentum of the project. It's been really good. And I think most importantly, the thing that I come away with every time and when I talk to practitioners about it, what's the key thing that we've come away with, is that Common Elements gives practitioners the language to describe their work. So I'd done some work really early on. I've been at Bethany for 2 years, and probably about a year in we started doing Common Elements. But part of my work was really around saying, what are the frameworks that we use? We're looking at setting up a common practice framework, and people were really good about telling me the theories that they use. And then I said, well, tell me how you use feminist theory in practice. And then they just got this blank look. And I was like, well, tell me how you use child development in practice. Blank look. Like, what do you mean? So actually the Common Elements gives practitioners a great way to describe what they're doing, because social workers would almost say to me, well, it's the vibe. And I'm like, I know it's not the vibe. You didn't go to university for 4 years for the vibe. This is really, and you're doing fantastic work, so tell me what it is that you're doing. So Common Elements has really given us that. We've had great feedback from practitioners through to managers, and you can read all of that. There's nothing worse than somebody reading verbatim from a PowerPoint slide, my pet hate. But through the project we knew we had a mixture of really experienced practitioners and people fresh out of university, and everybody got something out of it. They got something for their practice toolbox, which was fantastic. And we certainly had people at the beginning saying, I already do this in my practice, why are you asking me to do this again? But we were able to kind of move them along, and again it was that language to get people to use. So as with any change, there needed to be a shift culturally, and part of ensuring that people understood what the Common Elements was about was actually giving them a strategic framework, which is part of my role, and about what impact this work will have more broadly and how it actually fitted into the bigger picture of Bethany. So not just the work that we're doing in family services, but what does this look like? So late last year, myself along with the quality manager came up with the quality governance framework, and I say came up with, we borrowed very heavily from the DHHS quality governance framework, but we actually took the agency through a journey about what does quality governance mean and how we got there. So these are the domains from which we work, really in a continuous improvement lens to not guarantee, but hopefully strive for safe, effective, connected, person-led service delivery. And what I think we needed to think about was how Common Elements actually fits into that framework. So we've got this pretty framework, we've got some pretty colours, and every time I go out and talk to staff about it, they just kind of sleep, really. They're kind of like, I don't know, what does service user value mean? What does continuous improvement? What do you mean by safe, effective, connected services? So really the Common Elements actually gave me some language to talk back to practitioners about how we talk about our practice and how it fits more broadly into a quality framework. So particularly under the banner of performance and effectiveness, talking about an evidence-informed practice was actually the foundation from which we could deliver those safe, effective, connected services. And really this framework is about the agency having a responsibility to ensure that practitioners have the skills and knowledge to work with service users to get the best outcomes. Also under the domain of service user value, we understand that we need to do contemporary practice and ensure that the service user is at the front of all we do. Again, Common Elements gives us that language to understand what practitioners are doing in their everyday work, and this allows for a much more developed and sophisticated coaching and supervision, transparency and accountability, which all align to the quality governance framework. And it actually allows the practitioners to unpack what they've done to facilitate those outcomes for service users. So what we really want the quality governance framework to do is help us develop a consistency in Bethany's practice across a multitude of programs. So we run family violence, we run early intervention programs, housing, family violence, gambling, you know, a whole myriad of things that often don't hang well together because they've got lots of different frameworks. But actually the common elements comes in there and helps underpin all of those different programs. Importantly, the trial has also given us tools for implementation. So cheekily or smartly, we will reframe that and say smartly, we've been using the work that CEI have given us in the common elements, and we've been applying that implementation framework to trying to embed another evidence-informed framework, which is the Safe and Together family violence framework. And so we've been doing that and learning as we kind of go. We are certainly not experts in implementation science or implementing anything. We are learning as we go. It's a bit hit and miss. And particularly with even Safe and Together. So we've been on that journey for about the same time as Common Elements. We've been doing it for about a year. And we're probably like, okay, great, everyone's trained. Everybody's trained. Now what do we do? How do we know that people are doing this? So we still don't know. We're still sitting down and going, okay, what's the best way to actually know that people are putting this in practice? And so we used readiness checklists, and we still got some, you know, concerning results when we ask people about what they think family violence is. And so we're learning from there, but we actually set up a group to drive that. So it's practitioner heavy, and we're saying to them, okay, this is what the readiness checklists are saying. People are getting Safe and Together, but actually they're not really there yet. So what do you think are the best things to go? And we're moving people away from saying, we just need more training. We just need more training, because I'm sure all of you know people go to training all the time and nothing changes back in practice. So we're trying really hard to actually get people to understand what that's like and what we need to do, and making sure that that kind of works. So I guess what we're doing through Common Elements and now Safe and Together is being much more conscious about how we embed these changes in practice, and the next step then is really to think about how do we measure those changes. And I think in part we can probably do the measures and changes. The bit that we're kind of tripping up on is how do we actually measure the outcomes for service users. So is what we're doing by implementing Safe and Together or Common Elements making any difference to the end user? If you can give me the answer to that, or give me a framework, that'd be great. So my role, particularly as the Manager of Evidence and Practice Development, has been clearly to articulate the link between the common elements and other parts of the organisation using the Quality Governance Framework. In particular, how does Common Elements fit with our building of a learning and development framework? How does it fit with continuous improvement? And what does the evidence tell us, if anything? And again, that question about getting better outcomes. So bringing together practice development, the quality role, people and culture, as well as practitioner and service user voice, and using the Quality Governance Framework has made this a bit easier because we've got a pretty diagram to show people about how these things all connect. And we're doing this really to bring a much more consistent practice to Bethany. So our next steps are, now we'll have 2 whole teams trained in Common Elements by the end of June, which is fabulous. And then we're kind of like, what do we do then? How do we take that across the broader sector, broader agency? How do we understand the impact of Common Elements on practice and outcomes, on the practice and outcomes for service users? How do we continue to train people? Because none of us are trained in motivational interviewing. So do we outsource that? Do we bring people in? What does that look like? Do we just give people here's the outline for motivational interviewing, knock yourself out? You know, and the other thing is, what else do we need to know? We're not sure yet. So it's an ever-evolving journey, but it has been fabulous. I have to say the enthusiasm with staff have picked this up, and at times groaned about kind of data monitoring and all of that sort of stuff, that they've done it, and I think we've had real benefit out of it, so it's been great. So thank you.
I'm just wondering if anybody have any questions for Megan? Sorry about the noise, it's fixed now. I've killed them all.
What did you do?
I feel sorry for the staff here, because where's Robin Milden?
What do you need?
Robin, I walked in there and said, let's keep it down. Just really, it was way too loud. So if anyone has any questions for Megan, you know, there's an infectious enthusiasm for the work that you've been doing. And clearly the relationship with Sweet and the CEO in terms of you know, the supporting and walking you through this in a systematic way has been really, really instrumental. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Go on, you go first.
Oh, yeah, Annette from the Parenting Research Centre. That was so interesting. We've been doing some work around practice governance frameworks. I was really interested about you bringing the quality, the DHHS framework into your work and how you've connected it to common elements. Has that been clunky or has it been fairly smooth?
Because I can't hear that question. That's about bringing the, yeah, you heard that question.
It's been really clunky, so I think that, to be truthful,
Yeah, no,
it's the quality governance framework on reflection. We did really top down. We tried to do a bit of bottom up, but I don't think we did that very well. That was a lesson for us. But I think Common Elements did a really good bottom up approach. And I'm hoping if we squeeze them hard enough, they'll meet in the middle. But I think what we haven't done with the quality governance framework is it's still policy speak. I don't think we've put it into a plain enough language for the everyday practitioner to pick it up and go, oh yeah, I can see myself in that. I think we're not down the track of implementing that far enough to make it business as usual, if that makes sense. It's often years before you can kind of get that bit. And I think the most difficult bit is actually getting all those bits to talk to each other. So people in culture or HR, the quality person, so I sit right next to the quality person, often quality people. I apologise to any quality people in the room, but you know, you have a job to do, it's auditing, it's very black and white, but our stuff's grey and we're trying to bring people along and you know, it's the vibe and the quality person's going, no, how am I going to evidence that on audit? So, you know, it's clunky, yeah.
The vibe. Catherine, did you have a question?
I was just going to say, how far along are you with getting some consensus about that data monitoring? I know that could be a very long answer, but I just wonder, are you just beginning, or can you see a way forward? So
I think it's about people's capacity to understand data and what it's used for. I think organisations are often asked to produce a lot of data, and then we just hoof it off up the chain, and staff and practitioners never really understand why we're doing it or why we're counting those widgets or you know, any of that stuff, or somebody's looking at your case file to audit it, you know, that sort of thing. And what we're trying to do through the quality governance framework, I'm working on a completely separate evaluation around our men's perpetrated violence, but use the data that we're getting out of there and say to practitioners, you guys are working really hard, you've seen this many people, you're doing this much, and this is the result that you're getting. So if we can get people to own the data, then that'll be easier, because people see it as a bit of a burden. So I remember in one Common Elements lit meeting, which is a local implementation team, one person said, oh, it takes me half an hour at the end of the day to measure my common elements. And this lovely other practitioner just sort of turned around in her very gentle way and said, oh, it only takes me 5 minutes. So, you know, the different kind of expectation of what that means for them and their work. So
streamlining that will be a whole piece of work on its own. Yeah.
Well, I think it's about getting people enthusiastic about data.
Yeah. Wow, we're all on that journey.
Yeah.
Wow. We've got a bunch of enthusiastic people in the room. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for Melinda?
I do.
You do?
When you say you're doing practicing common elements, so what are the common elements that you're practicing?
Oh, which ones did you choose?
Which ones? So we did motivational interviewing. I'm testing my memory. We did problem solving. Thanks, Jess.
Family communication.
Family communication skills.
Responding to priorities.
Yeah,
Family
responding to
violence
priorities.
shows.
Yeah. I'm like. And the motivational interviewing has been picked by every team. So, and I have to say, I attended that training and it was invaluable even for me, not as a practitioner. It was great training.
And the new teams have picked slightly different elements. But some
Yeah, a
overlap.
couple of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a question. Oh, there's a question. There's a question here.
Oh, no, I was kind of going to ask a similar thing. What was the last one you said, sorry, about the
responding
To priorities.
Yep.
Mine is a comment just to congratulate you on your amazing work and hearing you speak about your journey through implementation. And, you know, we're not quite sure what comes next, and that's exactly where you should be. So I just wanted to say that's fine. You are where you should be, and that's to come. So, yeah, you just described the phases of implementation that we try to move people through. So you're where you should be. That's great.
Thank you. Very good. Very good.
So,
Any other comments or questions before we move on to our speakers? Okay. So we might keep going. If that's okay, Catherine, you're happy for me to keep going?
yes, please, Deb. Yeah.